Human beings are not made to live inside. I don't like to stay too long in a building.
The generation of today don't think we want to be in an office and in a box.
It may be a lawyer's office, but you know what? It's got a little bit of the Starship Enterprise in it.
There's a radical departure from the conventional wisdom of office buildings. Natural light gets into almost every part of the building.
It will be the most energy efficient building in Australia without a doubt.
I don't regard what we've done as risk. I regard it as bold. I regard it as leading edge.
The building, from a structural perspective, has been designed like a Formula One car.
Projects like this just bring a feeling and an attitude that this is the right direction to go. They help to build a cultural attitude that this is something worth doing for future generations.
Largest green wall in the southern hemisphere.
Fully irrigated by our recycled black water.
We're generating an audience up there, I think. We are visiting together this amazing building, number 1 Bligh Street, Sydney. This is the future for Australian office buildings. This is Australia's most sustainable office tower. This is a building that has been put together with energy efficiency, sustainability and clean energy at the forefront of everybody's thinking. Thank you very much for having the imagination and the courage to say that a building like this, in so many ways, so much before its time, was the appropriate building to build in this location for today.
Sydney's architecture during the 70s and 80s was largely driven by foreign finance, banks, insurance companies, seeing Sydney as a kind of an outpost and not having very high expectations for the buildings that they built here. We know where we sit across 5 or 6 different international indexes on economics and workforce and culture and livability. We know we're in the top 20 out of 250 cities in at least 7 of those indexes. And we look at why we couldn't be better. And we realise one of the things letting us down is the quality of the buildings inside the city core has not been a focus for a lot of people over the last 25 years.
Even before I saw the building, I was struck by the fact that the material about it, the published material, the website and so on, said that it was built on the Macquarie Ridge. And I think we so often forget topographical features like that when we're talking about inner city architecture. So the fact that the building is sensitive to the topography has been angled in order to take advantage of the beautiful views of the harbour. I think that's really impressive.
Every new building in Sydney rises in the shadow of the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. They're such iconic buildings. And as an architect, one really wants to embrace that and be influenced by it. They're such powerful, beautiful structures. And it's really a reminder of the past, but it's so much a reminder of what can be in the future. You know, you walk past the Opera House and you see these beautiful white sails delicately floating across the harbour, and one sort of is captivated by that, and you know, hopefully we get some of those magic ingredients invested in Bligh Street.
One of the unusual aspects of this building is the fact that you had 2 different architectural firms, an Australian and a European. And they worked really well together and they complement each other. The Australians understood the environmental challenges that we have in Australia, and so they brought that into the design of the building. But then you had all the lovely innovation and the learnings from Europe, such as the double skin facade.
Collaborations are dangerous liaisons in a way. You never know what the personality that's going to come out from the other person that you're working with and the problems that may occur. So there's a great risk associated with that, a great unknown.
Ray obviously appreciated the approach to architecture of Ingenhoven, and they're a perfect bond. They worked very well together, they worked very collaboratively.
But my personal role is trying to play that advocate, because there are many people moving in a direction, and that kind of move might be the wrong one. And my position is a little bit privileged in a way. I found that out when I stopped really drawing on a draftsman's table. And then I had to stop that in organizing an office. And I found that like the role of a director more. You are the challengers then for the team. And you ask them difficult to answer questions. We have a list in the office saying everything what the architect always forget. And the list is a long list. You have to identify these things now. You have to identify them. When we first come here, the reference point is always the Opera House, right? And then another reference point is, let's say, the harbor, the bridge, the public domain, the most important cultural things. And then the modern architecture of Australia, like Harry Seidler and Glenn Murcutt. And we wanted to be part of that reference points and add something which is even a little bit more into our time and facing a little bit more into the future, into the next 20, 30 years of use. And I think with the color, with the materials, with that honesty we are dealing with forms and constructions and with exposing that all, we are part of that culture. We hopefully successfully positioned the building in that family of modern movement architecture.
It's a glass balustrade, but there's no handrail. Yeah, so handrail
We had a design competition which was blind. Part of the submittals was a model of each of the schemes. They all arrived in balsa wood boxes, and just by chance the first model that I took out of one of those boxes was this building. With all due respect to the other competitors, I knew that was it. It was compelling. So that was probably the eureka moment for me.
When I first saw it from a distance, I thought, ooh, that looks a bit different. And so I looked at it and reviewed it with more scepticism than possibly the other designs. But the more I looked at it, the more I realised what it truly represented and the significant leap forward in design technology and innovation.
I handle success normally in celebrating it immediately after hearing about, because normally, let's say a few days to a few weeks after that, the trouble begins.
These sort of projects don't happen every day, and there are many issues along the way that could derail it at any point. And from an architect's point of view, getting the design to a point where we had the faith in it to present it so compellingly, and then for our client to take that on board, and then to convince the authorities, because we are moving away from so many of their own controls, and have people embrace this, has been, extraordinary.
If One Bligh hadn't been built and it had been delayed during the global financial crisis, it would have been interesting the impact in Sydney, because there were no other cranes around in Sydney.
We had a contract that we could terminate following the end of excavation, and we chose not to. The reason we chose not to is we had ultimate faith in the marketplace, in what we were doing, in the vision that we were representing, what it meant for us as a company, what it meant for Australia.
We were at GFC time. The demolition had commenced. We were invited across by Dexus. We loved the partnership. Team came together. Outstanding achievement on behalf of the whole team.
If you had to be doing something at that stage of the global financial crisis, it was probably be building, not be sitting with a finished building. So in that respect, we started before it hit, and we finished after we came out the other end and started to a much more healthy economic climate. The temptation to wince in the middle was definitely there, but the respective co-owners, as well as the anchor tenant, maybe had a thought bubble, but it didn't progress to much more than that. It was keep going.
I'd like to welcome you all here today to One Bligh. In acquiring this site, our vision was to create a development which would enhance the heart of Sydney's financial CBD and create the next generation of sustainable office development. This is where the next generation of commercial office space will emerge, a building the like of which Sydney has never seen.
Cities are the greatest generators of greenhouse emissions. They are the major contributors to global warming. They use 80% of the world's energy. And if we are seriously to limit our emissions, it's in cities that we have to make the biggest difference. In the future, and I hope very soon, the measures taken here will become the norm. The tri-generation system for heating, cooling and power, wastewater treatment and recycling, natural ventilation and energy savings, and the intelligent use of materials. All these aspects must become the norm for new buildings in Sydney.
I think as a builder, you're a creator. So you take pride in what you've created, but actually what drives you, what you're motivated by, is the next challenge. And this project represents a huge challenge. It's going in places that no building before it's ever gone. And that's an exciting thing for a builder to be part of.
We're pouring about 32,000 cubic metres of concrete over the life cycle of this job. That's about 75,000 tonnes. You've seen the 20 kilo concrete bags. That's about 3.5 million concrete bags. Now the challenge with this job is that half the concrete on the project is off form. So with your typical modern day building, what you normally do is slap up the structure as quickly as you can, and all the concrete with all its uglies gets covered up with a plasterboard or a glass or an alpolic cladding, but we don't have that luxury here. Everything is off form, so everything we pour gets seen at the end of the day. And that's a big challenge on such a large scale because you don't get second chances with off-form concrete.
There were many planning constraints on that site. I'd have to say that the architects ignored virtually all of them to come up with the right product. The planning authority could see that and embrace that once we explained why things were done the way they were. But virtually every planning control had been broken except two, which were critical in the planning authority's mind. One was overall density and floor area. They're very disciplined in containing that. And height.
You could have built a much taller building, but then it should have been much smaller as floor plate. So the problem is if you do it, whatever, 500 square meter floor plate, it's not possible. That's not feasible. That gives us two things. An addition of 20 meters on top of the building. We were allowed to do that, and that is by far the best view and the best place. We're taking away the not so good parts of the building for office use, and we're giving that all back to the public. One of the main problems we were facing in Bligh was that there is a city grid, and the city grid is rectangular. And then somewhere in the last century, the 19th century actually, they decided that it would be maybe a good idea to address all the streets towards the governor's house. And then it turned again to that rectangular scheme, and that leaves Flower Place being a very special place. So when we started the design, it was pretty much about, can we build a building which is just rectangular? If we do so, we don't use the view as much as it could be. We are dressing ourselves with the shoulder view to the harbour and not with the face. What is still important to understand about that shape is that it's not just done to look beautiful. It's done on the basis of really thoughtful, careful design. Has a reason, and at the end, that reason makes it beautiful. It's not just about having a bigger surface. I mean, we could have done things like that, like curved facades, and the surface would have been then bigger. But does then more people have the view? Because it's not about the surface, it's about people in the building enjoying the view, right?
I think one of the best things we did was, at the outset, we instigated a 3D design technology
called BIM technology, and that allowed everything to be designed in 3D, which made everything a lot easier to understand in the design elements, which are very complex in this building. And without the 3D design concept, I think we would have taken a lot longer to complete the building, and not to the same degree of quality.
It gives confidence to everybody that we can foresee any issue that comes up before it happens. This is what a building user would experience as you enter through the front door. We get to the reception desk and we can look up through the atrium. We can talk about issues a lot easier rather than arguing over drawings. So in a really tight space, we can walk through and say, like, what's going on here? How much distance you got between, let's say, a ceiling and a duct? And the hydraulic guy might say, you know, I can't fit my pipe through here. We have to work out another way around it. If something is not coordinated, we can pull it up and say, hey, there it is on the screen.
Our clients are grappling with the issues of climate change. Our staff are committed to doing their part to address the issue of climate change. So for us to be able to move into this building, it really indicates a commitment to all of those stakeholders. It indicates a commitment that we are going to do our part.
1 Bligh Street has the highest rating of a Green Star building, so it's 6-star Green Star. But not only that, it achieved 5 innovation points out of 5. They couldn't achieve any more.
The expression of the 6-star nature is actually the architecture. The 6 stars are achieved through the orientation of the building, through the facade design of the building, through the placement of the atrium and the naturally ventilated spaces. So it's a complete composition.
As a result of our facade system, as a result of our mechanical air conditioning system, and as a result of the blind system in the cavity space in the facades, we're able to minimise our air conditioning loads, or the expenses that we have due to air conditioning, by 50%. We've got a mechanical system which changes air very effectively, which introduces a lot of outside air into the built environment very efficiently. We monitor carbon dioxide levels very well, so people are always breathing clean air in this space. The materials that we've introduced into this space are low formaldehyde, low volatile organic compound level products, low fume products, so they're going to be, once again, breathing very fresh air. We process 150,000 litres a day of sewage, and we're allowed to withdraw water off the neighbouring sewage line. We're allowed to treat that sewage. We're allowed to extract all of the water out of it via about an 8-step process. We put all of the nasties back into the sewage line, and we use that clean water at the end of the day to fund our cooling towers and also to fund our toilet flushing.
The building has gone beyond its own recycling capacity to tap into public infrastructure to reduce the water consumption by in the order of 80 to 90%.
This building really depicts where buildings will go in the next decade. It didn't just incorporate a whole lot of green initiatives. The management systems of this building and how they can, through the computer systems that they've put into it, how they can track how the building's performing is absolutely crucial. And that is where we need to get to ensure that we're not only building green, but the building is performing, consistently performing to the best it can with its environmental initiatives.
It's been a very long and difficult journey to get to this point in time. We struggled to some extent getting our jump forms going. That's the core systems with the curved concrete cores. But once now that they're moving, it's actually a terrific achievement, and the site is getting a lift.
I ask people, do you remember a building at the Champs-Élysées? And they say normally, no, I don't remember one, but they remember the street very well. I mean, this is showing that the architecture is from minor interest in a way. It is a public space which interests you.
I'm always very concerned that buildings should give something to the street. I mean, the great example of buildings that don't give something to the street are gated communities. They give you nothing if you're a passerby. This building does give something to the street. It's got the stairs outside, known as the Spanish Steps, a piece of sculpture, there'll be a cafe there. There is a sense of giving to the outside world.
If you look to the Opera House, it's a quite celebrational approach, and it's a little bit artificial as well, because you are setting your own reason for that stair. There's no natural reason for that. Here, it's like the sloping Bend Street is naturally the reason why you have to have stairs coming up to it. And you see that if you're out there, it's absolutely relaxed. We didn't force it to be a big stair. We just make use of that. So what we are fighting for is, if you have a private client like that, this private client should think about giving the site back to the people. Our analysis shows that if you could add something on that side to Farrar Place, on the other side of the street, you're catching the sun. The sun comes around here, and then in winter it comes deep into the space, and in summer, because it's relatively steeper, during, let's say, 11 o'clock in the morning to 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it gets at least to that portion here. If you put that idea of extending Farrar Place in the back mind, and then integrate it into the idea of the elliptical building, that is perfectly extending the place. A raised building with that columns, with that stair in front of the building, coming down to Farrar Place. That stair is the exact extension we have looked for to make sure that the people are sitting in the sun in the winter, and at the same time in summer overshadowed by the building itself, and so it's very comfortable to sit there. All these aspects together made the design.
It's interesting when you look at a standard office building in Sydney, whether it's a rectangle or whatever shape it is, or it could even be an ellipse. But the typical condition is to have a core in the centre of it, with the lifts. And as the lifts stop, they come off, and we have a high-rise going through, etc. And we have toilets and all the rest of the stuff we have in a core. What we've done on Bligh Street is we've taken the cores and we've pushed them effectively to the side. So we've got a core here and a core here, and what we've done is effectively then made an atrium space in the middle, and the columns around here. And the big difference is then that you look straight through the centre of the building. You can stand here right at the back of the floor plate and look straight out to the harbour.
The complexities of the cores, did we underestimate them? I don't really know, but the complexities have certainly confounded most people that have been involved with the project.
Which we will. There's no real concern with that. The concern has always been with the cores, actually getting the cores far enough away, because the cores are just so complex.
Have that been done before?
Not with steel, because the core, that system there is around about 280 tonnes of weight, and it's about 4 times heavier than it needs to be. Because of the steel shutters which we put on for the finish of concrete. But in order to get consistent curves and consistent finish, it had to be steel, which just means just weight and complexity.
The biggest problem with elliptical shaped buildings is the surveying of it. It's not a square, it's not just even a circle. There are so many points and survey points that general foremen on 99% of your buildings can set out with a surveyor. Here we have 6 to 8 full-time surveyors.
The reason for the double skin is primarily to protect the sun shading, and the purpose of the sun shading is to ensure that no sun ever touches the floor or the inner facade of the building. That means in energy efficiency terms, it is the most efficient facade you could design.
So the components of the system are the high efficiency double glazing that wraps all the way around the facade. So a double glazed unit, 2 bits of glass. And then we've got this big cavity which contains our blind system, which connects via these cables to our BMS. So there's the brains of the system that sits upstairs that says the sun's coming around, we need to drop into position. In the morning, over there, all the blinds will drop down and go into whatever position they need to go in. These will all remain up, so you get lots of daylight and views out, and they will feather all the way around the building during the day. So it'll be a very active facade. Things will be going on differently across different sections of the facade. But the key thing is to get lots of daylight in there, but without the heat and with high levels of comfort. If you took a building that had been built over the last 2 or 3 years, the performance of the facade, the shading coefficient, would be about 0.3. That means 30% of the heat that hits the facade gets in. The performance of this facade is 0.15, so it's twice as efficient, if you like, as a typical facade. So twice the amount of light and half the heat.
Bligh Street specialty is about the views, the view to the harbour, view to Bondi, views to the city. So glass is an opportunity, and we try to stretch the borders of using glass in Australia, because we have an extremely transparent glass. We call it a white glass, which is transparent like a beer glass.
And what that transparency means is that during the day there's much more visibility into the building, but equally at night there's a lot more visibility out of the building. So with that wonderful location down there looking over Circular Quay, the blinds will raise up at the end of the day on a summer's evening, and you'll have this unobstructed, non-reflective view out to the quay.
It was quite a significant innovation to get the lift rails mounted onto the structure of the steel of the lift shafts off-site. Hadn't been done before, but we did it to save time and to increase the precision of the installation. But we also created very special lifting devices and cradles for transporting the steel. And the largest length of steel was something like 24 metres that was crane positioned in a single lift. The lifts are very, very beautiful things, but they are probably one of the most complex lift cars that have ever been built and installed in a project in Australia. Because they're a high-speed car, a 6 metre per second car, but there's no frame in them. They weigh in the order between 5 and 6 tonnes each car. They were delivered in a specially made jig to be craned in position and dropped directly onto the rails before you close in the shaft on top of them.
James Angus, who's the artist that we've chosen, after 2 rounds of competition, his work will sit there as if it was meant to be there. I have not ever worked with an architecture team that is so receptive to the art. And you know, the cliche about architects worldwide would be that they don't want art in their buildings. They don't want any interference. Absolutely not the attitude of, Christoph, Ray, and Martin. And also the client. You know, this client was very game, allowed a lot of different artists to be considered, including international ones. And, I think that had the result of allowing us to make the best possible choice. There were no limitations.
This situation, this building was particularly kind of tricky. It's an incredibly beautiful building, but the spaces for sort of working three-dimensionally are actually quite limited. A lot of the work is done really via email and computer rendering sent back and forth. And it's just terrific when it sort of happens to kind of get in the same room with an actual object and kind of really sort of look at the whole sort of spatial conundrum again. It's almost sort of, after operating sort of so virtually, it's almost like getting cataracts removed or something. You suddenly get a sort of surge of clarity.
It is very integrated with the building. It's not a match for the building. It has its own identity, which was very important to us. So you'll have the experience also of architecture and art, but not one capitulating to the other.
Basically, there is not a straight line in this sculpture to speak of, period. It's a continual set of compound curves. And if you were to cut a slice through it at any point, you'd effectively get an ellipse, which is what the template or the footprint of the building is. It was so sort of transparent and ethereal and sort of graceful that it needed something that was very material and opaque and that was matter, that was sort of stuff.
James Angus actually, as an artist, is very adept at managing that process. He has a great fabricator. He's got relationships that he's developed, even though he's quite young, over a number of years now. So we're confident that, there won't be any hiccups. And he knows already how that sculpture will be made and brought to site, which is a great relief for us. And I think it will be one of those works that draws you in, and people might nickname it, they might use it as a place to meet. I mean, when things like that start to happen, you've got a really successful work of art.
We were really looking for the qualities of the concrete to come through, and one of those involvements of the interiors was actually to apply a very gentle Lazure product, which is a translucent product which really celebrates the concrete. The Lazure is a really delicate oversprayed product which we apply to the top of the concrete, which maintains all those important patinas of concrete, the blowholes, the Z-bars, the misalignments, those honesties and those really important characteristics of concrete are maintained. We just give it a very gentle finish to achieve that little coloration. Not one piece of the concrete on this project has been covered up in any shape or form. Every piece of the concrete has been finished with this Lazure, from the soffits to these ceilings, to the jump form concrete, to the columns. It's the same language throughout the building.
We've had a combination of elements that have affected the project. A lot of rain in the last 6 months, and the complexity of the roof of the building. Yeah, the building has to look good from the top of the building, as well as with the fact that we have to build it. Now, that's one of the largest challenges in the whole project. It's one of the most complicated roof structures that we've ever undertaken. So at the same time as we're trying to build this roof structure, we're also dismantling our temporary equipment. But at the same time, we're still building up with slabs and doing structural steel roofs and glazed roofs and building plant rooms. It's a very challenging part of the project. Some of the lifts we did here were incredibly precise. We have to have our best crane crews on it. It's very high risk, it's very highly skilled, but it's all doable with the right people and the right procedures in place. The steel structure that we've designed is incredibly complicated, again, purely driven by architecture rather than building and functionality. It's all made of customised, fabricated steel sections. There's nothing really off the shelf up there. The challenge in the roof, not just building it, has been the design of the roof, and the fact that this roof has been referred to by many people as the fifth facade of Bligh Street. And so what that's meant is that we have had to coordinate, plan and design a really customised and beautiful roof into what would normally be a normal construction sequence. The atrium has caused a lot of rethinking. We've resequenced many times. As a builder, it's one of those things that building 140 metre tall atriums is something that you don't really conceive.
We talk about some of the challenges on this project. One of them is actually building this atrium. And interestingly enough, not so much about the walls of the atrium, but very much about the roof of the atrium. As you can imagine, it nestles itself in the heart of the building, and we couldn't close this part of the building off until we actually got to the very top of the building. So we've had clouds, we've had rain pouring through the atrium, and that's been a real challenge for the guys to manage their work around it. And it's only been in the last couple of weeks that we've actually been able to seal that atrium up and really finish that space.
The windows are literally hanging windows on brackets. They're very large window panels, but it's the work and the months of work in the steel, in the design and the bracketry to actually allow us to just hang the windows on.
The rooftop terrace has 4 beautiful Banksias residing on the top of it. The Banksias really symbolise the spirit of this green building. It's about bringing these beautiful objects to the top of the building and to celebrate the rooftop. You'll notice in Sydney we have a lot of beautiful landscapes and a lot of headlands, and the top of this building was very much about connecting it to the water.
If you speak to a lot of the companies that will want to come here, their most valuable asset is their people, and to put them in a building with high levels of fresh air, high levels of comfort, high levels of amenity, high levels of view, then they're going to want to stay here.
One of the things that tenants are really looking for is connected floor plates, open plan spaces, and good connectivity between the floors and through their organisation. So we think one of the things that Clayton Utz will really find when they move in is that they have a much more connected and holistic view of their own organisation, and I think they'll get real benefits out of that from a workplace point of view.
The connectivity of the building and the space, and the way we'll be able to fit it out and set out our offices does mean, and the open 270-degree glass, wall-to-ceiling glass, makes it very transparent and open, and we think will really enhance communication.
We believe it's extremely good to create this community aspect. Means we not have just communication on every level, we will have communication between the levels. So you're not entering a building just on ground floor and you see the people which are together with you in one lift car. You will see all the different levels. You will be able to experience, I'm working in a tower with some other people, so that's community creating.
The green wall is an extremely important element to the building. It resides to the south of the building and helps us create this other environment. There's a cafe there, people can sit outside, enjoy the sun. The acoustics are improved, and we're using Sydney plants. The childcare, which sits on lower ground level, is really celebrated as part of this important ingredients of the ground floor plane. It's very strongly connected to the public space, but the childcare screen just playfully encapsulates this space.
What we found with the mesh curtain, and we're still finding with the mesh curtain, is that it's significantly bigger and longer than the prototype that we saw in Europe. And so it's proven far more difficult to actually get the right shape into it, and also the connection of the individual panels of the stainless steel.
If you separate that childcare, if you have to separate that somehow, make it a little bit like less visible and less touchable. We felt that curtain, that this is a very beautiful, easy, very relaxed kind of doing that. The beautiful thing about that is that the fall of it is so natural. It's so very beautiful.
Yeah, a real pressure time at the moment. There's all hands on deck. We've got sort of 500-600 men on site. We're really trying to finish that building for our base building tenants to come on board, Clayton Utz, and as you can see, we're on level 28, and we're just finishing off that top level.
We're pushing. We're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week now.
To go. We can't believe they're going to finish, but they will. You can see they're madly cleaning the building top to bottom. The cafes being installed downstairs. They've got to be ready to be pouring coffees at midnight tonight.
We've moved across the road, but we've also moved into the 21st century. And you can see that in the reaction of passers-by, you can see that in the reaction of tourists. You come out of the building at lunchtime and you see tourists taking photographs of the building. You see people wandering into the foyer and looking up and then taking a photograph as they look up into the atrium. It's becoming a Sydney landmark. The reaction of the staff has been quite fascinating. They've been overjoyed to be able to move into a building like this. But perhaps what's the most interesting is the way that our competitors, other law firms, have reacted to the building. When they started coming through and we got a lot of requests to come and have a look at the building, they were just blown away.
The most successful thing about the building for me is that it looks really like it has been there before. It's not just thrown there from the moon. It's just coming out of that situation. One of the biggest compliments you can get as an architect is if people by themselves, without being forced to, using, for example, the steps, the stair to sit on, or the cafeteria, the success is coming by the people and it's not forced by the architect.
We've had a number of comments while the art was being installed. My recount was that in the early 70s we had a Prime Minister who was vilified for supporting the National Gallery's purchase of a $2 million piece of art. Today, that piece of art is a national icon and it's called Blue Poles. And I think that goes to what art is. It's controversial, it makes a statement, it's bold, and that's certainly something we've tried to create here.
You know, in a way, it's a bit like when you're driving through a landscape and the scale and the shifts, the curves of the road and hills and the shifting perspective. I'm sort of interested in the views up through it. So kind of almost like a tree canopy or something like that.
It was extremely important for us to create a permeable ground floor plane, and that manifested itself in these beautiful uplift doors here, some 600 kilograms. They just seamlessly move up out of the way and just create that openness of floor plan. It also continues up through the winter garden facade and just gives us that natural ventilation capability. The louvers open depending on the weather conditions, and we create this winter garden environment. The clarity of materials on this project is incredibly important. The building's so much about space and about the public realm, whether it's vertically through the atrium or across the ground floor plane, that we actually worked with two materials. Low iron glass for the clarity of the glass, avoiding the yellows, the blues, the greens, and also with the concrete. It was about capturing the qualities of concrete and celebrating that, and having a very calm and very ultra-conservative palette. Childcare is prominent in this building. It's not hidden away. It's very much part of that public ground floor. One of the most endearing qualities of the childcare screen is the fact that you see people walking up and touching it. They don't quite know what it feels like. If I put a loose piece in your hand, it will feel like velvet across your palm. As soon as you pull it into tension, one creates another type of quality again. So we're really playing with this workmanship and this play on light, works at daytime and nighttime, and really fits the childcare in a really sort of playful fashion. The building embraces every element, every space, and one can look to the fire stairs for that, where we're borrowing natural light and bring it deep within the core. In the same way, the bathrooms have this amazing opportunity of view and natural daylight, adjusting the louvers to suit those privacy requirements. That finds its way all the way through the building to the plant room. One can really see how the building works and how the ducts are connected to the machinery, and in turn how the building breathes. The glass lifts are something that's really special for us. I mean, I remember sitting on the drawing board, drawing those glass lifts, thinking, they're never going to build these. This was a competition. These were dreams, these were ideas, this was about sort of trying to achieve the ultimate. And to actually stand in those glass lifts now and realise them and see the clarity, look up and actually see the atrium and the sky above you in that space. Level 28, a really important part of the building. It's the top of the building. It's very, very much part of the fifth facade. This space was very much about bringing outdoor quality to the top of the building. It's protected by the external double skin, just continues to rise above this space by some 3 stories. So you really get that all year round space to be able to utilise. The terrace is very strongly connected to the floor plate and very much part of that workspace, breaking that indoors and outdoors environment with our uplift doors, which just help that permeability, sort of bring those same qualities that we have on the ground floor to the very, very top of the building.
So does it look as far as you thought it looked?
Further. I don't even think I can see the bottom. Made it.
I should have given you a squeegee to clean up your hand on your way down.
So how was that? It's good. It's good. It's quite surreal coming down, but it's for a great cause. So promoting Property Industry Foundation and also obviously One Bligh. So really excited with the double cause.
I think this is a great exemplar of what the future is going to be for buildings in Australia and around the world. How you combine sustainability with great architectural outcomes. And for me, Bligh Street does it perfectly.
Ladies and gentlemen, it now gives me great pleasure to invite the Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard, to address you and to officially open One Bligh.
I'm here tonight because I came to this building as part of my work and my responsibility in helping Australians understand what a cleaner energy future is going to look like, how we are going to live differently in the future. You are here helping us imagine what this cleaner and more sustainable future can look like. A beautiful building, a building that people would be proud to work in, a building with a magnificent outlook, with all of the features that people would want in modern office accommodation, and here it is being done at 6-star sustainability. So people living differently but living well, and that is what number 1 Bligh Street is proving in this city.
3, 2, 1.
I was tremendously impressed when I first came here. The design, the thinking about everything from the water to the energy. It's such a smart building as well as such a beautiful building.
Innovation, design, excellence and sustainable. That's what it's all about.
This building was a real success in many, many ways. Certainly from a safety perspective, we worked over 2.1 million man hours. We had no serious injuries on site.
This building is about the future. And the commitment of Dexus to this building is about the future, and they're showing real leadership in terms of where we have to go. We have to create buildings like this. The triumph here is that this is an absolutely gorgeous building, but it is actually reaching 6 stars, which is the highest bar that we have.
Should we all put our hands in the air and wave? What is?
An artist walks away from the canvas, comes back, but at the end of the day, there's a final stroke, and I think tonight's celebration is the final stroke on the One Bligh journey. This project is now done.